Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 370. Directing teenage actors is like juggling jars of nitroglycerin, exhilarating and dangerous. Stephen King.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken, and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Welcome to the first episode of 2020, and this is, my friends, the year of the Filmtrepreneur. The tribe is going to make a lot of money and impact a lot of lives with their art, their films, their projects, their content this year. And I am going to be there to help you do it. Now, today's guest is definitely the way to start off 2020. We have the legendary educator and writer Judith Weston, whose book, Directing Actors, Creating Memorable Performances for Film and Television, was a seminal book in my early directing career. I read it when I was in college. It is one of those books that is on most directors' shelves. And if it isn't on your shelves, you need to buy that book and read it. It is a wonderful book about actually how to work with an actor, how to pull a performance out of them, how to guide a performance out of them, how to talk in the language an actor understands. It is so important. I've seen so many independent filmmakers and big, studio filmmakers who have no idea how to talk to actors, who don't understand the language that they speak, don't understand where they're coming from, and it frustrates everybody involved. And Judy is there to help, bridge the gap between the actor and the director. And we dig deep into her methods, what she does, how she does it, who she's consulted and worked with in Hollywood, which is a who's who of Oscar-winning directors. So it's pretty amazing to have this conversation with her. So I was really excited to get her on the show. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Judy Weston. I'd like to welcome to the show Judith Weston. Thank you so much, Judith, for being on the show.
Thanks, Alex.
I appreciate
so much.
I truly appreciate you coming on the show because your book, Directing Actors, was such a big part of my early directing education, because a lot of the things that are in your book, they weren't teaching to me in film school, especially the film school I went to. They really didn't focus a lot on the directing aspect of things. So your book was like a treasure trove, and still is a lot. I mean, there's nothing that's gone stale. All these techniques, actors are still actors, directors are still directors. And your book was so instrumental in helping me in my directing career. So first of all, I want to just, as a fan, thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing it and putting it out into the world. And we'll talk more about the book and the new version of it that just came out and other things. But before we get into it, I just want to ask you, how did you start on this journey on helping directors, direct actors?
I was thinking about this. I knew you were going to ask me this because people always start interviews with this, and I'd listened to some of your others. And I realized when I was thinking about it, I realized how much I just like talking about myself and talking about my work. What I like to do is do the work and, help people, like you say. But the short answer of how I got into it is I was an actor. I was an actor, and I began to see that some directors were good and some were not. And I began to notice certain things. And I think it was I'd come up from theater. So in theater, you do a lot of rehearsal and you have a lot of collaboration, and you never argue about changing lines in theater, but you can argue with your director all you want. So that's different about theater than film. And but I loved getting into television and getting into film. I loved it right away. But the first job I got, I had maybe the best director in the world, and John Cordy. And the second job I got, it was for an afternoon special. I was living up in San Francisco, and they used to, that's where I'd gotten started acting, and they used to shoot up there. It was a great place to shoot, right? And cast the smaller roles from the local people. So I'd gotten this job as Miss Palmer, the teacher, right? After school special. So, and I was so happy at my second job. That was very exciting to get a second job very soon after my first one. And I bounced up to the director on the first day, and I said to him, "Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. What shall we do with Miss Palmer?" And he looked at me like I had two heads, and he said, "Well, just do what you did in the audition. You were great." And I just thought, okay. There are directors who don't know how to talk to actors, or who aren't interested in talking to actors and aren't interested in hearing ideas or even talking about ideas, even expressing their ideas or having ideas. And they're kind of piecing things together like it's a jigsaw puzzle. So I filed that away. I mean, I was an actor. I wasn't interested in teaching at that point. I wanted to, work as an actor. And but I had been told by my acting teacher, Jean Shelton, one of my major mentors, a mother figure, if you will, that I would. We had a special relationship, and she always told me that someday I would teach. So at a certain point, when I started teaching, I remembered this, I'm sure very wonderful. I'm sure he did a very good job with this after school special, and Miss Palmer. And I thought, directors really need to know more about what actors do. They really, really need to know more about actors. And so I started out, I was just doing an acting class for directors. I just thought, I'm going to make it, once a week for 8 weeks. People will, they won't mind signing up for that. And, I'll just teach them some acting. And I had been teaching a class called Acting for Non-Actors. So I discovered that I was good at that. I was good at getting people to, I was good at getting a performance out of somebody who'd never acted before. And I thought, well, they'll figure it out themselves. If they get into the actor's shoes, they'll figure out for themselves what's going on with actors, and they'll have more empathy, and they'll be able to communicate better. But people still kept asking me questions. They kept asking me, and the main questions were always, why do I need to know this? And how can I use it? And at first, I had the idea, well, it should be obvious. It should be obvious. I'm teaching you about verbs, so it should be obvious that you should use verbs when you communicate with actors. But it wasn't. So that was just fantastic. I always learned much more from my students than I'm sure I ever taught them, because they kept at me. Why do I need to know this? How can I use this? And so I thought, well, I got to figure that out. And they really pushed me to figure out exactly how, precise ways that the tools that actors use, like backstory, emotional, or what I call emotional history, verbs, objectives, what the character wants from the other character, imagery, subtext imagery, the things that are going, the memories and the ideas that are going on in the character's mind.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And how those, how those could be director's tools as well, in addition to actors' tools.
So I'm going to tell you a story of when I first directed my first short film in college.
Oh, please do. Please do. I love to hear your stories.
So when I got a group, I went to an acting studio and I went there and befriended a bunch of actors. I said, hey guys, we're doing a short film. And it was shooting in our apartment. It was some college, a bunch of college kids sitting around talking. It was, the experience of that I had at that point in my life. So we got all these actors together and they came over and we, had all my technical stuff. I was shooting with the cameras and I had my little crew together and everything. Then the actors started they went outside they started like kind of yelling and going like trying to shake something out of themselves. Like blah, 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 blah. I had never seen anything like this before. And I'm like, oh my God, these people are crazy. And at that point, I realized, these people speak a completely different language than I do. We are, it's like Earth and Mars and Venus, it's like, it's just speaking another language. And I was able to communicate with them and I was empathetic and I was able to get, to a certain extent, there was some result directing in there. There was some other things, on the nose stuff that you do when you're a young director. But that was the first moment I realized, I'm like, I need to understand how these collaborators speak. Just like I had to learn cinematography language, composing language, production design language, all the other departments. As a director, you need to understand their languages. But actors specifically, because they're such an integral part of the storytelling process. And then that's when I picked up your book and I started learning a little bit more about what they do and how they do. Yeah. But I feel that there's so many directors that run when they get an actor like that or actors like that, they're shocked and they just don't know what to do, let alone with all the pressure of trying to actually make a movie, let alone a bunch of actors yelling and screaming and doing things that they've never seen before.
Right. Did you ever take an acting class?
I did. I took a couple acting classes. In my day, I realized that I do not want to be an actor because it is. When I took the acting class, I realized, first of all, I became so empathetic to what an actor does and how they do it, and the exposure that they put themselves out there to do what they do. Good actors, at least, to do what they do, and. From that moment on, I was always very kind in castings and things like that. But from when I became,
you're a kind person,
and
that matters. That counts.
I try, but I always realized that even in castings, which are brutal. I mean, I've seen casting directors shred, actors, and if I had any sort of power in the situation, I made sure to stop it. But I've seen it. I always made sure to be extremely kind and courteous and just empathetic to what they do, because it's such a sad thing, because you as an actor can prepare and do everything and you might be awesome and you might know your lines and everything, but you walk into that room, you're not what they're looking for. And it's nothing personal. It's not a judgment on you, your talent. I'm looking for someone who's 6'5", African American, and you happen to be 5'8" and Asian. I'm like, it doesn't work. Your acting is fantastic, but it's not work for the part. Or I have something in my head that's not matching what's walking in. So I became very empathetic. And I think that's one of the keys of a good director, is to have empathy for what they're doing. I think that's the starting point. Then you build that relationship. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, I think that's very important. I mean, one thing that I used to tell my acting, the class I taught was called Acting for Directors. I taught it for 27 years. And this workshop was limited to 12 people, 12 directors. And I used to tell them right in the beginning, I used to say, do you realize that actors think of people who are not actors as civilians? That they feel in a completely different world, and and that they're in a fight, they're in a battle, they're in a not a battle. It's fun, they love it, but so they're not going to get killed. Like,
I use the analogy of battle all the time. I always tell people I have shrapnel. Constant. I have a lot of shrapnel inside of me from this business, so I completely understand.
But actors, they feel like people who are different from everybody else on the planet, and that includes everyone else on the film set.
Which says a lot, because we're crazy.
That's true. But actors still crazy. Actually, sometimes I make the analogy to it's like teenagers. That not that actors are more childish or more less mature, less developed than adults, but the way that adults think they like teenagers, but they really don't. That teenagers are too out of control. They're too out of control, and adults think they love their children. But they really don't like teenagers, and that I think that actors feel that way sometimes on a film set. That the people, they love them, they need them, but they don't really like them. They don't really like that actors are loud and they hug too much and things like that, and they can be temperamental. And if they're not if they don't express the temperament they're feeling, they shut down, and you can't get them back just by dialing a knob. So it's so they bond together. They hang out together and they feel more comfortable, and it's you have to get invited into that, and to as well as to respect it and to see it as a craft and not just like a childish thing that running around and being too expressive
and
pretending, yeah. Right. But to but anyway, it can be just so exciting for a director to understand enough about actors that how to invite yourself in or get invited rather, and that's what we talk. That's what we mean by trust, is that. And one thing I want to say about, because one of the questions directors always ask me, they would always ask, how do I get actors to trust me? And my answer is, if you want someone to trust you, you must trust them. That's the secret. It's a very simple one. It's hard to remember sometimes, but it's a very, very simple one, and has to do a lot with my principle of opposites. I think opposites are, crucial in so many ways. But if you want somebody to trust you, you must trust them. And directors are often, young directors are mistrustful of actors. They're sort of instantly in damage control. They're looking around saying, as soon as the actor does something strange, they're thinking, "Oh, she wants to ruin my movie," and how can I rein her in to keep her from ruining my movie? And I don't know. Actors are not like that at all. They really, really want to help. They really want to. They want to be. They want to be engaged with the director. They may want to fight. But it's ideally they're fighting over ideas. They're fighting over interpretations and not over. I mean, actors know that the director is the leader, and I don't think of it that way. As most of the actors I know, they're not fighting for control. They're fighting for ideas. And excuse me, I know you want to say something, but it's always good to treat people as if they're fighting over ideas and fighting over the work instead of fighting for control. It's always better to keep the focus on the work and not on the ego.
Yeah, gosh, yes. My latest movie is called On the Corner of Ego and Desire for a reason. It's about filmmakers. Okay. So I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm going to give you my experience, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I find it that actors, at least from my years of directing, actors want a safe space. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And they want to feel protected by their director to go out on the limb, because they do. The great performances in history are actors going out there without a net in a safe space, because they have to feel that there's somebody there to catch them if they go too far or if they wander or anything. And they need that safe space to play. And if you can give an actor that safe space, you're able to create that bond with them. And then they can grow more, and they can do more, and they can experiment more. But the second an actor does not feel safe, that's when they shut down. That's when they start trying to take control, because they're in damage control for themselves a lot of times. I've seen it. It's happened to me early in my career. I've watched it on sets where actors literally have no relationship with the director, and they're just like, well, look, I'm here. Now this is about me. I got to protect myself, and I got to make sure my performance, and they just block it. And then this is all, but it all stems from having that safe space, having someone that, this person has your back. Is that, from your experience, is that fair to say?
Here's how, yes, exactly. But here's how I translate or what you say about safe space is so important for any creative endeavor. And the way I think of it, and in a way that I think is more easy to remember, more easy to do, is it's permission to fail. So one time a student of mine, after the workshop, she created this beautiful artistic painting for me, and on the theme of give yourself and everyone you work with permission to fail. And that's the key thing, is that you can have the idea that you want to give a safe space, but if you're criticizing, if you're correcting, if the disappointment is written all over your face, then it's so helpful to keep a forward movement, to keep focused on the glass half full instead of the glass half empty, focused on what's going well, and then kept saying, well, let's keep working, let's keep working. You can say something like that. I think we've got more to, you can say, you don't have to pretend you like it if you don't, but you can say things like, I think there's farther we can go. I think there's another layer we can get. You can put it in that positive forward way. And you don't have to tell them what it is. If an actor isn't what you think of as there, you can say to them, I think we can go. I think you can go further here, but you don't have to tell them what to do. It's you don't have to tell them how to do their job. You can. I think that's a place where directors get mixed up, where they think, well, I don't have the language, so I can't tell them how to fix what's wrong. Well, you don't have to tell them how to fix what's wrong. You can tell them. I go back to some of the greats, like William Wyler, back super old school. Well, I'll just mention to your readers, they may never have heard of William Wyler, but
it's Billy Wilder. Yes, of course. Billy Wilder or William Wyler?
Oh, no, it's a different one.
Okay.
Did I get that wrong? William Wyler?
You might. I know Billy Wilder, but I don't know. I have not heard of William Wilder. I might have heard of him. I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Director of never mind. He directed Ben-Hur. He directed a bunch of things back in the day. Anyway, a bunch of Academy Award-winning movies, but he's been dead a long time. Anyway, he used to after every take, he would just say, "Do it again." He would never give any particular direction. He would say, "Do it again," and of course, he shot a lot of film. He's cost the studios a lot of money because he would shoot and shoot and shoot without, and then eventually the actors would figure it out for themselves.
Exactly.
I was rehearsing with the camera running.
Yeah, and like my last film I did, I basically was a lot of improv in those films, and I just kind of gave the actors a really beautiful, chorale to play. And I'm like, okay, guys, let's have some fun. Let's play. And my first film was very experienced, like extremely experienced actors. My second film was young actors. And it was wonderful to watch how I just like, hey, let's just play. And the difference between the seasoned actor and the younger actors, because the seasoned actors were like, this is fantastic. I've never had so much fun in my life. There's no pressure, because it was so stress-free and it was like an anti-film set. And then in the second one, everyone they had no idea. They were just like, this is fantastic too, but they were more scared. They were more scared of like approval and things. And I had the pleasure of directing Robert Forster in a project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, who just passed. And
such a wonderful actor.
Oh, he was wonderful. He was one of the sweetest souls I ever met. And when I worked with Robert, I was this is going back 10 years. I was a young director. He was Academy Award nominee Robert Forster, who's worked with Quentin Tarantino and many other big time directors. And he was as courteous to me and worked so hard on the project as if he would be walking on a set with Quentin Tarantino. It was fascinating to watch. And even when I gave him direction, he would turn to me and honestly say, was that what you wanted? Are you okay? Do you want me to do it again? He was kind of like coaching me a little bit on how to, because I was intimidated. I was like, Jesus, this is, Robert Forster. Right. It was fascinating to work with someone like him. He was so, he comes from an older generation, obviously, but that generation of work ethic. And he's like, it was a short film he was doing for me as a favor. And he came in and he just did his work. And it was wonderful to work. When you work with seasoned actors, you realize, oh, this is what it's really supposed to be like. With a seasoned DP or seasoned production designer or anybody. It's fascinating. It really is. One question I want to ask you. We talk a lot about this, and it's something that you and I both understand what it is, but I really think the audience would help benefit from your explanation of it. What is result direction?
Okay. It's best explained with examples. And that's how I started out the first chapter of directing actors, with these examples of result direction. So for one example, line readings. That's the simplest. That's the simplest, and I think that most people recognize. Telling the actor, let's pick a line. Let's say the line is, "When are you coming home tonight?" Mm-hmm. And the actor says, "When are you coming home tonight?" And then the director says, "Well, don't say it that way. Say, when are you coming home tonight?" That's
line readings. That's a line reading, right? Yeah.
So that's very clearly, that's the result. That's the result, the way you want the line to be said. And that's maybe the simplest and most easily understandable example of result direction is telling the actor how you want it to be said. And it's and really, directors really have to get away from that. They really have to. I mean, what I just did, the simplest way to translate what I just did was with intention or verb. When I said, "When are you coming home tonight?" That I had the verb, the intention to invite you to come home and to be welcome whenever you got here. And when I say, "When are you coming home tonight?" I'm accusing, right? So that's my verb, is to accuse, or you could call it an accusatory tone. I like to use the verb to accuse. And if directors start to understand the difference between, I just want to hear it the way I hear it in my head versus what's going on underneath. What is this character doing? What does this character want? What effect does the character want to have on the other character? Does the character want the other character to feel welcome and to feel warm, or does the character want the other character to feel threatened. You know, like you better do what you're supposed to do, or else you'll be in trouble.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And so that's a simple example of, you know, instead of asking for the result, to give some thought to, you know, what the intention is underneath. Another one, of course, is to ask for a mood. You know, can you make it more quirky? Can you make it funnier? Can you be angrier? Those kinds of things. Those are result directions. An emotional result. Be angrier. Be cuter. You know, things like that. Be more disappointed.
So let's say instead of saying you're angrier, would you suggest like talking to the actor? I'm like, okay, instead of this part, I mean, you obviously could say, I want you to be angrier. And it's very...
You can say what you can say that.
Yes, of course.
Say that.
Yeah.
Of course you can. But I never want to tell anybody.
No,
I never want to be the language police.
Okay, can you make it a little angrier? No. But then if you can talk to them in the sense of the scene, like, you know what? Instead of doing it angrier, I'm like, you just found out that she's cheating on you. Go with that. Is that a direct? I mean, if that's the tone you want, because if you like... you know, what was that? The line? What was the line you just said? Are you coming home for dinner? If you say you just found out that she's cheating on you, and you say that line, it's going to have a completely different energy behind it. Is that a good way of doing it?
Here's the thing. I really think it should connect to the script somehow.
Of course.
And it should also be a collaborative with the actor. So I always will start with a question. I'll always ask the actor, what do you think is going on here? Okay. Instead of jumping in with telling them how I want them to do it. And especially if you're saying you just found out that she's cheated on you, if it's not in the script, I mean, that's of course you can make that adjustment. You can make that, as if you just found out that she's cheated on you. That's perfectly permissible to make adjustments that are different from the facts that are given in the script. But I don't know. I don't feel quite right just unloading that on an actor, because I'm still asking for a result. I'm just pretending that I'm not. It's really a little bit lengthier process of asking, what do you think is going on? What do you want from this in this scene? And one thing I want to find out first by asking that question is, do they have an idea that they're really invested in, that I would be very well served by listening to? Okay. So, if I say, what's your idea about the scene, or what do you want here? What are you working on? And if they say, well, they very well might say, I know you want this angrier than what I just did, but I have this idea that I'm going to trick her into thinking I'm not angry, and then surprise her with a disaster later on. Then that's a real idea. That's that's worth looking at. That's worth paying attention to. And then you can say, I totally, and you can still say, I totally understand that. That's a great idea. I really love it. Here's the reason why I think he starts out with accusation right out of the box. Then you give him a reason. And go ahead.
So thank you. That was fantastic. I think that was very beneficial for everyone listening. The one thing I see when I look at a performance, especially when you're looking at shows or movies, is the honesty behind it. And that honesty is something that you can smell. You can smell. Most people can't pinpoint it. They'll just go, or I didn't really connect to that, or didn't that. That's why anytime Meryl Streep just gets in front of a camera, you feel like it's magical. How she just embodies whatever she does so effortlessly at this point in her career. And she's been doing it for decades, but the honesty in those performances. And if you look at the best actors and best actresses and supporting over the years, there's an honesty to those performances that is so you just can't put anything on it. You can't define it. It's not something that can be definable. But when you don't see it, you can see it.
Exactly.
When you don't see it in the performance, you can feel it. So like sometimes my wife, who's not in the business, will be watching a show and she's like, she's a horrible actress. And I look at her, I go, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's like, because it's like so one dimensional. There's no gas behind the pedal, if you will. How do you nurture an honest performance? Is that something that is brought, the actor needs, how can you pull that out of them or nurture them to be able to perform that way for you?
So the principle that I like to talk about and promote and encourage people to embrace is the idea that it's not a collection of single performances, but it is a configuration of relationships. That the story is about relationships and not about performances. And, it's not about the individual characterizations. It's about the relationships. And when you talk about Meryl Streep, one of the things I remember a long time ago, back when Inside the Actors Studio was a big deal. And of course, I watched every one. And I used to tape them and rewatch them. And Meryl Streep was on. And then that guy, that interviewer that everyone complained about.
Lipton, yes. I
know. He was so well-meaning, and he had put the whole thing together. So, you have to give him props. But he could be, well, anyway, so one time she was on, and he was asking her a whole bunch of stuff. And then all of a sudden he said to her, how much of your performance do you get from the other actor? And I'll never forget the look on her face. The camera was on her, and she went red. She looked like she'd been slapped. And she said, well, all of it. I get all of my performance from the other actor. I have no performance until the other actor is there. And it was like she was hurt to be that at the suggestion, because, she's known as a kind of a technician and, as making every character completely different from everyone else. And she used to be faulted for that, not anymore. Now she's kind of accepted for the queen she always was. But the idea that she crafts her performance all by itself in a laboratory and brings it in and presents it to the camera she was letting us know that was completely wrong. That was completely not what she was doing. That she creates prompts for herself. She would give herself a lot to work with, but then she would give herself over to the other actor in the scene. It's the term that actors use for this is listening. But it's much more than just hearing. It's much more than just something you do with your ears. It's a surrender. You take all of your preparation, and all of your preparation, of course, hopefully will have been honest. You will have been done honest preparation, not just making something up because you think it would be cool or you think it would be interesting, but something that you honestly know about life. Either it's because you know about it from your own life, or from observation of other people and imagining people in circumstances that you've never experienced, and research. But you do all of that. You do your personal exploration, your observation, your research, your imagining. You do all that honestly ahead of time. But then when you get on the set with the other actor, you forget it. You almost let it go, and you give yourself over. You respond in the moment to the other actor. That's how it looks honest. That's how it looks natural.
That's excellent. Great answer. Great answer. Now, if you're not getting the performance you want out of an actor, what are some tips you can use besides, taking a stick out? No, I'm joking. No, but believe me, there's probably some directors listening, but like, what do you mean? Is there a wrong thing not to take the stick out? No, if there's a way to, if you're not getting the performance you want, because we've all, look, directors have all been there. We have not gotten the performance we want out of a certain actor. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And vice versa, the actor has not been able to get the
Can you give me an example though? Like what were they not? What were they doing that you didn't want, or not doing that you did want?
They're either getting in their own head, and they're let's say they're saying the line and they're saying it the same way, no matter how many different ways you tell them to change it, they still are saying the exact same way, and they think in their head that they're changing it, but everyone listening is going, nah, sir, you're not changing it. And I think they get caught up in their own head, and then they start spiraling. They'll start spiraling down a dark hole, and then it can go dark. So if you're not aware of that, you can lose them, not only for the day, but possibly for the project. So if you start seeing things like that, what are some tips or techniques that you can use to try to bring them back out?
Well, that particular thing of actors getting stuck in line readings, you should find out on casting, and you should not cast an actor who does that. So one of the things for castings, I have this whole set of ideas that I think are helpful for auditions, where first of all they come in, you let them do. You say, I really want to see what you've brought in, and have them do what they want. But you say ahead of time, I want to see what you've brought in, but no matter how perfect it is, we're going to work with it a little bit. I'm going to give you some other direction. And then even if you love it, you should still work with them, give them some other direction, and make sure the lines come out differently. That's where you have to make sure that the actor can change their line reading with a different adjustment. Because there are actors who have been improperly taught, or untrained, or improperly trained, who fall into line readings like that. And sometimes the only way you can get out of that is by changing the line on them, just before the scene starts. That's what some directors do. And it really it's a failing in their training, and you shouldn't work with them. But you need to find it out in auditions. Now, if they are a very good actor and it's a total shock to you, maybe it's somebody you didn't even audition because because they don't audition or things are so perfect. You could take them aside and you could say, you know what, the funniest thing is happening. I feel like the line read, we're falling into a line, and you don't have to say you are falling into. You can say we're falling into a line reading here, and I don't know what to do about it. It's started to feel a little stale, and can you tell me what to do now? Obviously, this should be said with nobody else around.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, this is something that's very important to say to all your wonderful listeners. Is I believe every time you talk to an actor, it should be in private. Mm-hmm. Every single time. Now, if you're saying something like I just described, which is so sensitive, that you have to really look around, make sure no one's in earshot, not even another actor. But even for very innocuous and even banal seeming interactions with an actor, it's really better to have privacy. The absolute worst thing you could do is to yell a direction from behind the monitor, or behind the camera where everybody in the whole set can hear, to say, to yell. Make it angry, make it angrier, or
that was horrible.
Whatever it is.
That was horrible. Do it again.
That wasn't it. That wasn't what I told you. That would be the absolute horribleness. And I'm going to assume that the directors who are listening to your podcasts are aware enough that they would never do something like that. But always go up to the actor always go up after every take. Go up to them, even if you have nothing to say. Even if you go up to them and you just smile at them and say, I got nothing to say, but we're going to go again. To make a personal connection, and anything you say to them, if you say, I think we should try a different adjustment. What ideas do you have? That you say that privately, or even if you very specifically say, I want you to really punish her this time. That you don't let anybody overhear that, but especially the crew, not to let any of the crew overhear, because here's why, is that, the crew then becomes an audience, and they become, judgers. They become judgers. They hear the direction, and then they're watching the actor to say, is she going to do that this time or not? And there's no need for that. That's not what they're hired for. They're hired for, they're very, very skilled at what they do, and that's what they're hired for. They're not hired to judge whether the performance. And sometimes people ask me, they say, well, gosh, what if it's you're shooting in a small location, a small room, and the sound guy and the camera operator, they're close by. It is impossible to talk to the actors without them overhearing. And I have to say, well, yes, it is. You could whisper.
Yeah.
It's not that hard, but you could whisper, but you could also talk to the people, particularly the sound person, the camera operator that are going to be close up, and it's going to be, difficult for them to leave their equipment and move away. You could say to them ahead of time, I'm going to want to speak to the actors privately after every take, and I'm not going to banish you from the room for each of those occasions, but I'd like to ask you to not listen. I'd like to ask you to turn your attention away and allow and give us the privacy. And you could say, are you willing to do that? And they're not going to say no.
Of course not.
Then they're going to try their best. And then besides that, you can whisper.
Always a good metric on if a scene is really powerful. If you can make a grip cry, that's generally a really good indication that you've nailed something on that scene. I've had that happen a couple of times on my set. I'm like, you just made the grip cry. That was fantastic.
Well, I always, when I was acting, when I was acting in, TV shows or whatever, I was used to the theater, so I loved an audience. I liked to have an audience, so I was always playing to the room, to the crew, and so I used to like it when sometimes, because I never was the lead in a television movie or show, but I used to like it if one of the crew members would come up to me and afterwards and say, yeah, you're a real actress. I really thought you were great. So especially Chris, sometimes it just meant that they were irritated with the star, but anyway.
Now I want to
be so mean.
Oh, no, Cruz. No, look, Cruz it's my job as a director to create a safe space. If I've had crew people walk up and say not cruel, but just dumb things or something that throws an actor off their game. And as soon as I find out about that, I fire or either have a stern talking to or fire that crew member, because you can't have that kind of energy on set if you're trying to create a good environment for not only for the actors but for everybody involved. Sometimes I think it's the crew wants attention too. They want to be respected, and but it's not a zero-sum game. It doesn't have to be if the actors are respected, the crew is disrespected. It's not zero. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. Yeah. Now, one area of directing that doesn't get spoken about much, but it is something that a lot of directors will have to deal with, is directing children. Any tips on directing children? Because I've directed children a handful of times in commercials, and it's fun, to say the least. But I'd never had to pull a very dramatic performance out of a child or anything like that. Though I've heard some horrific stories of how directors get those performances, which are illegal here in the States, but I've heard them elsewhere. That's been pretty brutal as well. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I know. I think I know the movie you're talking about, but we won't get into that. But
Yes.
Yeah. But well, I think people should know that when a child is younger than 7.5 or 8, then if you make them go through really difficult, terrible emotions, they will be damaged. That is the way it is. Do you have children?
I do, and they're about they're that age range.
So when children are, somebody told me this once, and it just opened everything up. When they get to like 7.5 or 8, probably, then they start to have an independent imagination. They start to have independent ideation. And they can look around at the world and make up their own mind about what's going on. But when they're younger than 8, everything that comes in they're like a sponge. They believe everything. That's why they believe in Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. They're told they're Santa Claus. I mean, it's very unlikely, right?
Judith, let's lay Santa Claus is real. Let's just put that out there. I don't know where this rumor started. It is horrible. Let's just put it out there. Let's put an end to it right Let's here. Put an end to it. Santa Claus is real. Just in case my daughters ever listen to this. So let's just put that right to this. Santa Claus is real. I'm hoping to get at least 1 or 2 more years out of it. So please.
Yes, Virginia. Santa Claus. So, but they will believe whatever they're told
because they don't know any. Of course,
until 8. It's not a question of some children are more mature than others. It's wiring in the brain. It's the development of the brain. So if a child is younger than 8 and you're asking them to go through horrible things, they will be damaged. So you don't want to do one of my students, Jennifer Fox. She directed this movie that was bought by HBO. It's called The Tale. I don't know if people have heard of it. It was kind of a big deal. And it was about it had to do with child sexual abuse. And the girl was 13, and she'd cast an 11-year-old but she talked at great length how she avoided any possibility of any, damage to the girl in these really brutal sex scenes or rape scenes. And she did, whenever there had to be scenes, whenever it had to be shot where both the child and the perpetrator were in the same shot, she had an adult body double. And and shot it so that, that wouldn't be noticeable. And when there had to be close-ups of the girl's face, it was just the girl, the actor playing the perpetrator, not present, and Jennifer saying to her, "This is like a bee is stinging you."
Right.
That kind of thing. So, that kind of thing to take it out of there. So
you have to put it down to their level. You can't say, okay, now you're getting raped and this is the way it is. No. I mean, I know you and I look at it as like, this is funny, but that's what people will do. I've seen it. I'm like, dude, you can't say that. To bring it down to the level of the child and just go, and I love that stinging, the bee stinging thing is wonderful. It's a wonderful analogy of it because that's how you have to direct the child. You have to speak there. You have to go through 2 levels of language: the actor's language, and then child language. So you have to kind of do both.
Exactly, and then you if people are interested, look up interviews with Jennifer Fox about this movie, The Tale. There's really good stuff there.
Okay.
The other place to look for great advice about working with children is on the extras, the DVD extras of a movie called Rabbit-Proof Fence.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
I know that movie. Yeah.
I am blanking on the director's name. How could that be? This wonderful Australian director.
Yes, it was an Australian film. I forgot the name of it too, but we'll look it up. Don't worry.
Okay, insert it later. Okay.
Yes.
Because I don't want.
It'll be in the show notes. I'll put it in the show notes. Don't worry.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful movie. Well, as you know, since you've seen it, it has 3 leads, children. Their ages are 9, 7, and 5. That's really
danger spots.
And anyway, he goes into great detail. He does a commentary on the whole show, working with them, and then there's an extra, little featurette about the casting and the rehearsal with them, which is fantastic. Now, some of that, there's the 40-minute featurette is on the YouTube, so you can find it. Mm-hmm. Rabbit-Proof Fence, making a featurette, and it's really, really helpful. And as I've listened to it a number of times, and if I boil down what he did, he looked for children who had who could play an objective, and who had imagination, and who were not afraid of the camera. And that's the main thing. And he took a long time to find them. That's the other thing. If you have a dramatic lead, this was a drama, Rabbit-Proof Fence, you must take all the time you need to find your lead. I had read, Beasts of the Southern Wild, mm-hmm. which is a wonderful movie. And they found that little girl. I mean, you can't imagine anybody else in the world playing that role. Well, the director said in interviews that he met with 4,000 children. Mm-hmm. 4,000.
Yeah, Kubrick for The Shining, he met, I think, around 4,000 or 5,000 kids at the time as well. I mean, they all do. The good ones. You have to just keep looking until you find the right one.
I was just listening to, I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody talking about the director of To Kill a Mockingbird. Mm-hmm. So now, Beasts of the Southern Wilds just a few years ago. Rabbit-Proof Fence was, I don't know, maybe
a decade.
10 years ago, something like that. But To Kill a Mockingbird made a long time ago. And what this director used to say for the rest of his life, people would say, "Where did you find those children?" And he said, "I searched for 6 months." So this is something that has always been true, that you have to, to find a child that has the imagination mm-hmm. and the commitment. There's an objective. The objective has to do again with listening. It's like, I want something from you, and I'm paying attention to you as to whether or not I get it. Yeah,
and I think also another element of that is this true connection. As a director, you're looking for a connection with your actors on a different level than just performer and director, especially with children. There has to be a rapport. There has to be a comfort level. There has to be that intangible thing when you're working, especially, commercials are different, but if you're working in a narrative scenario, there has to be some sort of thing there, because if there isn't, that's the thing you're going to fall back on when the things get really rough or tough in the scale of just making a movie. That connection, that rapport is so, so important. I remember watching Spielberg, some behind the scenes of Close Encounter of the Third Kind. Mm-hmm. If you remember that scene with the little boy, you remember the little boy in Close Encounter, that beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a little boy in Close Encounters, and the the scene where the aliens open the door, and we don't see the aliens yet. We just, the door opens and the little boy is there. And in one, to direct him, Spielberg had one scene, a guy dressed up as a werewolf jump out really quickly, to kind of jar him. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And then he was like scared for a second. And then Spielberg jumped out as a bunny rabbit, dressed in a bunny rabbit outfit. And he knew it was Spielberg because he's a director. And he jumped out and then he just started to smile. And that's how he pulled the performance out of that child.
Oh.
And that's why Spielberg is Spielberg. And he did that back in 77, 76. So it wasn't like older Spielberg. It was young Spielberg. That's just genius. Now,
I was going to say it's young Spielberg, but because he was like a kid himself.
Yeah, and still is to many ways. Now, I could keep talking to you for hours, Judith, but I'm going to ask you a few last questions I ask all of my guests.
Yes.
What advice would you give a filmmaker or director trying to get into the business today?
Okay. Do you mean other than go to film school?
Yes.
Because I think people should go to film school. I'm not one of these people that says film school is unnecessary. Film school may be out of reach financially for some people. That's certainly understandable. But I don't buy these people who say, let's say they can afford to go to film school and they say film school is a waste of time. I don't buy that. I think it's very important not to just try to be a filmmaker all by yourself. You have to work with other people. That's one of the best things about film school. Even if, hopefully you have good teachers and a good curriculum, but even if you don't, you have other people that you're working with and you can learn from them. And, film is a collaborative medium, and it's good to start practicing with that. It's good to start practicing with the idea that you have to trust these other people. You have to communicate with them. You have to listen to their ideas. You have to learn from them. So I'm a believer in film school. I think it's a good idea. Now, I know some people can't afford it. And now I am supporting political candidates that are trying to propose ways that anybody who wants to go to college can do that. But
there's a lot of affordable film schools out there. Even community colleges have, there's so many options out there.
Even in Hollywood, there's Santa Monica College. There's LACC. There's community colleges. So I'm a believer in that. I'm a big part because of the community, because of learning from other people. And not just thinking about how do I become a filmmaker, but how do I build my community? How do I build my relationships and my tribe? How do I find my tribe? So that's what I feel. Now, if for whatever reason you feel like you can't bear, I do reject the idea that film school is a waste of time. But if you feel like for whatever reason you can't bear to go to film school, school is just that disorienting to you or whatever, then you have to find some other way to make connections. I mean, networking is a part of it, and being, finding people to collaborate with, but you start whatever way is right for you. If color is your thing, then figure out how to tell a story with color. But I do feel that all directors should take an acting class at some point.
I agree with you 100%.
And if you and to not do it because you're going to decide whether or not you're good at it. It doesn't matter if you're good at it. It's a question of exposing yourself, taking a chance. You have to have a teacher who's not going to criticize you. When I don't teach that class anymore, acting for directors, but part of what made it work was that I was very supportive. But no. Anyway, I do take an acting class and do find your tribe.
I'll tell you, I had the unpleasant experience of having to act in my last movie, playing myself, no less. That's the only reason I took the job. It was because I was playing myself. And man, I hate. When I was editing it, I made sure to cut myself out as much as humanly possible. So I do truly believe, I agree with you 100%. A director should definitely take an acting class so they can feel what it's like.
But that's why you should take a class. You know, like Quentin Tarantino put himself in Pulp Fiction as, was he Mr. Wolf or something?
No, he wasn't Mr. Wolf. He was Jimmy. He was Jimmy. Some colleague of Mr. Wolf, I think. Yes. But anyway, Jimmy, yeah. And, you know, it was a little bit of a dead spot, but, you know, in an otherwise, you know, almost perfect movie. But so I don't think I don't mean that directors should go in front of the camera, but they should take a. Agreed. No, directors should not be in front of the camera. I'm not saying that at all. Please. No. Okay. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Yes, I prepared for this because I heard you ask other people. It's this. Everyone is different. That's been the hardest lesson for me. Because I am a very inward person. I'm a introvert, and I don't think hopefully I don't sound like one in this interview, but I am. And so much is going on inside my head. And it tends to be sort of impossible for me to understand that the same kinds of things are not going on in other people's heads. Mm-hmm. So that's where I've made a mistake a lot of times is, you know, jumping in when I think other people, you know, I think there are certain assumptions that everybody has. So to really, really listen, because everybody is different. And as far as how that applies to directing and teaching, every actor is different, and every client that I work with. I'm not teaching workshops now. I'm doing one-on-one consultations with film directors preparing to make their movie, and every single client is different. Every single script is different. Every single, you know, and to be insatiable about, you know, turning myself over to them, listening to them, finding out what they need instead of imposing my idea about what they need. And I have to learn that every day. It's always a struggle because I have very strong ideas.
Fair enough. Now, what is the biggest fear you had to overcome just getting into this business in the first place, or being an actress, or writing your first book, or teaching your first class? What is that biggest fear?
Oh, gosh. Well, as an actress, I was less afraid on stage than off stage. I was a shy and frightened person off stage and on stage, you know, but on stage I wasn't afraid. So I don't know how that happened, but I just was so lucky to find it. So my biggest fear was that I wouldn't get to do it. You know, once I started teaching, I loved it so much. The first night that I taught my very first class, I couldn't sleep the whole night. I came home and I just couldn't sleep the whole night. And that used to happen after every class I taught for a long time. And my only fear was that I wouldn't get to keep doing it. So I don't know. That was... I think you have to find a part of the, you know, if you want to be in the business, you have to find a part of the business that makes you feel like you're home, you know.
Fair enough.
I think you do.
And three of your favorite films of all time.
All right. I knew this was coming too. So what I decided to do is to start with just in the last year and a half. You know, I mean, because I'm an older person, and sure. I don't know that your listenership wants to hear, oh, the 70s, nothing good happened after the 70s in American films. But so I decided to think about my three favorites of the last, I was going to say year, but then I stretched it
few years
to include First Reformed, which came out a year and a half ago. Okay. First Reformed by Paul Schrader. With Ethan Hawke, and then currently Parasite is in the film. It's in the theaters now.
Nice.
Which is have you seen it?
No, I have not. I have not.
Oh, God, you've got to see it. It's brilliant, brilliant movie.
Okay.
And then earlier this year, The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Yeah, I heard wonderful things about that.
Yeah. So those three movies of the last year and a half are, movies that I really want everybody to see that moved me.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Tremendously. Now, if you want to include television, then of course
that's a whole other conversation. Yeah, there's so much good television. I want to say
When They See Us, because that was directed by one of my students, Ava DuVernay, and then yesterday I saw Jojo Rabbit, and I thought, well, I'm too.
Dying to see Jojo Rabbit. I hear it looks so amazing, and I just hope it does. Yeah. I hope it looks like it's as good as it is.
I think it surprises people. But I loved it. I loved it. And then Taika has taken classes with me too. So it's very dear to my heart. And I love movies where you have to kind of figure something out about the filmmaker's heart.
Right.
And or what you could call their intention. And in Jojo Rabbit, to really understand it and enjoy it, you have to kind of find your way into Taika's heart. And of course, I've seen all his movies, so I'm sort of, and I've worked with him, and so I'm already there. But anyway, it's really worthwhile, even if you don't know him already. And that's true of Ava, is that you get clues to the heart of another human being, and it's true of Parasite, and it's true of Last Black Man in San Francisco, and it's true of First Reformed, so anyway, I'll stick
that's
with
awesome.
Somewhat current movies. I won't go back and talk about A Woman Under the Influence.
Well, of course, John Cassavetes. I mean, it's fantastic.
Or
film.
Dog Day Afternoon. I'm not going to mention them.
I mean, well, they're fantastic. You can absolutely mention them. Both those films are fantastic and should be watched by everybody. Now, currently, you just released the audiobook version of your seminal book, Directing Actors, which just came out a couple weeks ago. So that's exciting. Where can people find the book, your other book, The Film Director's Intuition, and more about you and what you do? Okay.
I have a website, judithweston.com. I have a Facebook page, Judith Weston Studio for Actors and Directors. And on there, you can find the links for the audiobook. It's on Audible, of course, but it's also on a whole bunch of other places where you can get it maybe, possibly cheaper. Like libraries, you can get it through libraries. But one thing I want to mention about the audiobook is that Directing Actors was written, can you believe this, 23 years ago it came out. Yes. So when I got this opportunity to do the audiobook, I went back to reread it, sort of thought, well, I have to prepare to, I want to read it. I want it to be the reader. So I better, read the thing again. And I found that there was a lot that I wanted to change. So I went and changed it. I said, I'm going to do this. And they said, okay. So it's quite, it's updated in a very significant way. Each chapter is updated in a significant way. And so I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy with it, and I hope people like it and find it useful. And,
Judith,
yes.
And well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and my tribe, and it's been wonderful talking to you. So thank you so much for taking the time, and I appreciate all the work that you do to help actors work with the work you do for directors to work with actors better. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alex.
I want to truly thank Judy for coming on the show and dropping those major knowledge bombs on the tribe today. Thank you again so much. If you want to get access to her new audiobook version of Directing Actors, which just came out, you can get actually a free copy of it if you sign up for Audible and just go to freefilmbook.com, sign up there, or you can go to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/370 for links to her website, her other courses, books, consulting, and everything else that Judith has to offer. She is a wealth of information. So thanks again, Judy, for coming on the show. And guys, if you haven't already and you've read Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, please take 5 seconds and leave a review on Audible or Amazon. It means the world to me. If you really love the book, just take those 10, 15 seconds, guys, and leave a review. It really means a lot on the rankings and getting that book out to more and more people. And thank you again all for such rave reviews, such amazing messages and emails that I've been getting. So thanks again so much. And as you noticed, this week's schedule was a little bit different than usual, and this is going to be the standard schedule for podcast release. So it's going to be Mondays, Film Entrepreneurs podcast. Every other Wednesday will be the Bulletproof Screenwriting podcast, and every Friday it will be Indie Film Hustles episode. And I wanted to let you guys know that, like I promised last year, I am focusing a lot of energy on Indie Film Hustle TV, and I just added 3 new premium courses. They are the Film Entrepreneur Side Hustle courses. One masterclass on freelancing, how to become a freelancer. Another class on how to make money with affiliate marketing, creating that little side hustle money, little extra revenue streams while you're building your film entrepreneurial empire and working on your script or working on your movies. And lastly, how to make money with Amazon as a side hustle. Many different ways you can generate revenue with Amazon, not just the affiliate side, but many other ways that Amazon can help you make money. Amazon is a juggernaut in the online space and gives independent creators and independent film entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs opportunities that no other website gives. So I definitely check those courses out if you're a member. And if you want to check them out, just head over to indiefilmhustle.tv or ifhtv.com and sign up. Thank you guys for listening. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.